Maritime Matters is brought to you live by Bahamas Maritime Connection.
What is maritime?
Maritime, simply put, relates to navigation or commerce on the high seas.
Some say money makes the world go round. I say ships move the money that make the world move.
Who navigates those large international ships?
How often are international ships required to be surveyed and inspected?
Maritime also protects our seas and borders by way of our local Bahamas Defense
It is
Force.
very sad to say that out of 1,500 plus ships that are registered under the Bahamian flag, only a very small amount of Bahamians are employed.
Maritime Matters.
Hey, guess what today is? Well, you know today is Tuesday. Oi! And it's time for Captain Glenn. Turn your radio on. So everyone, let's gather around. Cause Maritime Matters. He's a native of Andros. Say what? But he grew up in Nassau. Sail around the Bahamas, all around, with the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. Hey! Well, you know today is Tuesday. Oh yeah. And it's time for Captain Glenn. Let's do any boy. So everyone, let's gather around your radio. Cause Maritime Matters. Hey! Well, you know today is Tuesday. Say what? And it's time for Captain Glenn. So everyone, let's gather. Cause Maritime Matters.
Everybody gather. Woo, to Maritime Matters. Maritime Matters. It's a Tuesday, my friend. It is another Tuesday. And if it's a Tuesday, you know the deal. It's Maritime. Tick, 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 tick. Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain. We're coming to you live, ladies and gentlemen, via Love 97 FM studio. And it's Tuesday, the 21st day of July 2026. We encourage that if you're driving and tuning in with us, please do so cautiously and ensure to take your time in getting wherever it is you are trying to get safely. As the saying goes, drive to arrive alive. Our sponsors for tonight's show are 101 Pharmacy and also Island Care Pharmacy. For all your medication needs, check out my little cousin Shanty, Healed McBride, and a lovely team at 101 Pharmacy in Nassau and Island Care Pharmacy up there in Freeport. Fill your prescription at any of the stores or send your refills via the online site, 101pharmacy.com. That's 101 Pharmacy, all lowercase, all one word, .com. The three locations are East Street South, Charles Sanders Highway, and up in Freeport, we have Explorers Way downtown. That one, of course, is Island Care Pharmacy. We are secondly sponsored by Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited. And at BMC, we provide a full slate of ISPS security measures. Good night to my 93-year-old Auntie May up there in Freeport, and she's headed fast towards 94. Auntie May says she going sentry. She ain't care what nobody say. She ain't checking for nobody. She only me. But Auntie May, you go for your sentry, girl. And when you pass that 100 mark, look back behind, because I could be right in your wake swimming, trying to get 100 too. That's how I could begin on Auntie May. You know how we roll. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we engage discussions surrounding shanty towns. We also want to talk about Celebration Key. You know, that nice resort that Carnival built in the middle of nowhere, Grand Bahama, on the big highway that goes out east. Yeah, we talk a little bit about Celebration Key. And we also want to talk a lot, not a little, a lot about ships inspections and service, and that's for international ships. You know, all them big ships running up and down of there. Ships carry more than 90% of the world's trade. We know what's going on with the Gulf of Hormuz right now. We know the Red Sea, lockdown. But everywhere else in the world, ships moving around every day. Plenty ships. You got over 50,000 ships registered to trade worldwide. Those ships be carrying everything from passengers to fuel to water and orange juice to containers with a whole heap of stuff to rocks, bulk cargo carriers, rock, sand, cargo, coffee grains, you name it. Ships are so relied upon to keep this world going that without them, the world that's people that start suffering and you see all the people suffering as a result of what's going on in that tiny little area called the Persian Gulf. Well, you could imagine if all ships stop moving. Well, you know, being the Bahamas, we'll be mashed right up. Mashed right up because we import well over 90% of what we utilize. So that being the case, we will be in problems. So tonight, we're going to discuss what some of those ships go through as far as being inspected, how often they got to be inspected, who qualified to inspect them, and surveys. What the surveys entail, what are the surveys for, why they need to get surveyed, and all the rest of that, right? We can talk about all that. Now, shanty towns. As we speak to shanty towns, we have very recently the shanty town in through the corner. That's what the name of that street is. Montgomery Avenue. That takes you all the way through the clinic on Carmichael Road, all the way to the next end. Then they go in a village called Montgomery Village or something like that, right? And they had a lot of unregulated homes, building a community. And of course, our Superman, Minister Clay Sweeting, Minister of Works, decided that, you know what? We're not having it. We are going to tear this shanty town down, and we're going to tear all the rest down, one after the next. This is the one that we gave notice to over a year ago, back in January or February of 2025, and they jacking for us. So we had enough. Election over. We back on track. This one got to go. And they went into, they as in the task force. You know, they got a task force known as the Unregulated Communities Action Task Force. And that Unregulated Community Action Task Force went into action. And they went at the eastern end, the southern end of Montgomery Avenue, off Carmichael Road, and they tore down over 60 structures. I wouldn't even call them buildings, structures. 60 unregulated structures. I think they were supposed to tear down some 66 and they must do 62 or 63. Anyway, 90% of them was gone, right? Probably 95 or 98%. But they were just running through them. Because they told the people to be coming back to take these down. So you all need to move out. And the thing about it is, one fella decided, yeah, you all tell us we got to go, but, you know, I know if I get nowhere to go now, I want y'all touch my teens. And when they arrested him and started killing me, he want to fight. And in this want to fight business, he picked on one of the Defense Force guys. And I think the task force chairperson, Chief Superintendent, not Chief Superintendent, you need to be Chief Superintendent after all this, right? But Superintendent Stephen Carey. He's the chairman of the Unregulated Communities Action Task Force. He stepped in to calm the fella down or whatever the case may be. And the fella ended up hitting them and he had to take stitches. So here it is. Our government of the day is doing what is required to take down unregulated communities in Nassau and the rest of the country. I think they went to North Andros last week. But let's not have in Nassau because that's where you got most of them. Maybe so we got must be over 40 of them now. And in doing just that, one person decided he's not having it. He's not falling prey to the government fixing this problem of unregulated structures all over the place. And he decided he could fight the chief, or he could hit the chief. And I don't know how that happened. There ain't no details. But, the chief got it, and the chief had to take stitches. Is this the way we want to go in this country? No. This can't be the way we want to go in this country, eh? We have to do what we have to do to regulate these unregulated communities. And if we don't do it, who can do it for us? Amnesty International? United Nations? No, sir. This ain't their country. This we country. And we, the Bahamian people and the government of the Bahamian people, needs to fix it. And while we fixing it, we don't need no foolishness from nobody. And I stand with you, Superman, Minister Clay Sweeting, in getting the job done. And I stand with Superintendent Stephen Carey, the chairperson of this Unregulated Communities Action Task Force. We got all of them to deal with. Let's deal with them. Now, if you need my help, let me know, because I out of the system now, boy. But I could put on some boots and see if I could do some booting up if necessary. Because this has gone too far for too long. And while we rope this into order, we need all persons that dwell in this land, whether you be Bahamian or not, to try and assist and uphold the laws of the land. Because if you are here and you hear the right way or the wrong way, I don't think you want to be in a place that is lawless, eh? So let's at least observe the laws when it comes to regulating structures and not lend to it, not desist from it. That's my take on it. I have a problem with it, but me and many others, we trying to clean things up and people try to physically do things to impair it. No, we're not having that. The demolitions will continue. They will continue. And under the helmsmanship, as a maritime man, I like to deal with people who steer the ship. Under the helmsmanship of our Superman, Minister Clay Sweeting, we will ensure that the demolition of unregulated communities continue. Moving forward, we will continue to place those notices where we are required to give you 28-day notice. In some cases, we give you months' notice, right? But we can give you the minimum 28 days notice. And we expect that if you know your house was built and you didn't get approval, and in many cases, even in your land, but it's your house. And we say to you, this needs to go, or we have to break it down. Well, of course, you ain't gonna move it. You ain't gonna break it down. So we gotta break it down. But what we want you to do is cooperate, because you was wrong for putting that there to begin with. You could just call somebody property and build something and expect to get away with it and own it and say this yours and nobody can move you. Excuse me. And didn't go to the Ministry of Works as required, as all of us have to do, to get your necessary approvals. In fact, you probably even never had no plan in place to be approved. Go and get your necessary approvals from the building unit or whatever area in the Ministry of Works that deal with inspection for making sure your electricity is done properly, inspection to make sure your plumbing is done properly, inspection to make sure your columns are done properly, your roof is tied in properly. All these things you need approval and stamp for. And if you ain't checking the authorities, you're building that behind their back, when you finish, we need to break that down. Simple as that. And that apply to me too. That ain't special for no category of people. That apply to all of me. See, I running out now, that's getting started, right? So we want to talk a little too about Carnival celebration key. You should recall that I think it must have been about a year and a half ago or so when Carnival cleared the site and placed a cruise ship pier that can facilitate 2 cruise ships at a time on the mainland of Grand Bahama, just south of the big long Grand Bahama Highway, that one that Sunrise Highway that takes you all the way to the bridge. Then you go over the bridge, you come back around, then you get the Grand Bahama Highway. That's the one will take you to Hope, what was the place name? High Rock, right? High Rock, and then you pass High Rock and you get into that area, South Riding Point, and you get into the all the way out to Pelican Point, McLean's Town, and then you catch the ferry to Sweetens Key and Deepwater and all them, right? So along this highway, we had this is in the vicinity of where the University of the Bahamas was, the one that the hurricane came and mashed up. Because, they kind of moved into Freeport now. They took over the Kipling building and I be in and out of Freeport, so I know what's happening, right? But the previous one, still there, the structure is still there, very damaged. But as you head toward the east and you pass that'll be on your left-hand side. And you will shortly after passing that come up to a street, and you can see it because it looks so nice and neat on the side of the road, where it leads to Celebration Key off the highway. But you got to drive for a little while before you get on what they call Celebration Key. And they ain't no key, it's the main line. It's just that they fix it up and fence it around and make sure once you come in on the ship onto that Carnival celebration site, you could get out by taxi, but you can't walk nowhere. You see, and that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is there are no communities in that vicinity or that immediate facility, not even in a distant facility. The communities are very far away. You got to either go up toward High Rock, past the missile base in that area, up in High Rock area, and there's a little settlement there before High Rock. I know all them funny names that them said, right? But you either go up to that area, which is miles and miles away. You can't walk it, you can't even ride bike on that, right? Nothing hot sun. Or you go back toward the bridge. And you got to go over the bridge because everything on our side, on their side of the bridge is those nice big time homes, right? And you ain't got no bars and restaurants and places where people from the cruise ship would want to hang out. Not only that, they can't walk their know. So the reality is, really and truly, when those people come off that ship, and they go to Celebration Key. That's like them going to Half Moon Key that they also own, right? Because Half Moon Key ain't connected with no land. It's surrounded by water. It used to be Little San Salvador back in the day when I used to patrol the area. But Carnival bought it and fixed it up, and now it's Half Moon Key. Because when those 2 ships each carrying about 5,500, 6,000 passengers. I'm going to get 12, 14,000. Well, not 14, 10 to 12,000 passengers in there on any given day, right? Because usually 2 ships go there every day. And they're building another dock now, so they got 4 ships every day. And you know what 4 ships represent on a little spot like that? I can tell you what it represents. It represents a whole heap of people running around looking for something to do but getting in each other way and Carnival making up all the money. You know why they're making up all the money? Because everything in there belongs to them. And the passengers, and if you multiply 5 by now 20,000 people coming off those ships or on those ships, coming ashore to go in the pools, to go on the beach, to do little check in the restaurants, that type of thing, get something to eat. So they have an enclosed, they have what we call it when you basically own everything. The ship that's coming in and spending money with you while they think they go on the shore. They ain't really go on the shore. They still in your closed network, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Carnival shouldn't do that, because Carnival is a business operation like everything else. And if they have the inclination and the intuition to put something together for their passengers where they could make more money, plus they bring in more passengers to our place, and on the ground inside that arena are Bahamian employees. Yeah, they get a couple of foreigners, we know that. But 90% of the employees are Bahamians. So I think it's up to us. Now, Carnival don't bring the people there. Eh? They pick a spot that they like, they bring the people there. But it's up to us to find intuitive ways of getting those people to want to leave that area to go do something. And I based on the article, many of them, many Grand Bahamians, put packages together to carry people away from that site. And I'm sure they probably gone right down the road to the Garden of the Groves, and they have a national park going up the next side, and they probably went into High Rock and had some fried fish and pancake, or you can get that if you go to McLean Town. And you go and you do what you gotta do to give the people a tour. But you can imagine if you go to a country on a cruise ship and they say, oh, come do this tour. And you go on the tour and you ain't see nothing that fascinates or interests you. And you're like, what I coming here for to look at bush? What I coming here for to look at this and look at that? Because the beach you have a Carnival key look better than the beach they can show you. The little trees and things what you might see, hey, nothing different. They more bushy, eh? Now, Garden of the Grove can give you a little flora, but not extravagant. So to pay all of that money to leave Carnival site, to drive alone, the cost of gas and labor and the vehicle maintenance and all that, it's going to cost a good chunk of money to each tour passenger. And they're not going to be too happy with what they see. We all been in and out of free. Fremont ain't got nothing spectacular. Nassau ain't really got nothing. You know, they recently said Nassau was the worst sport in the world to go to. Well, you know, they obviously they lie. I don't believe that. In fact, I know better because I've been to ports that were far worse than Nassau that they ain't talking about. Right? I've been on plenty cruise ships. I've been to plenty destinations. So they can't be talking to me. And they just quick to say that because you know how it is when they come to the Bahamas. They don't like how our government put so much hair tax on them. Because when they go to the Eastern Caribbean, they mash up them countries, and some of the countries they don't pay zero for hair tax. So we're bringing the people to you, we ain't paying nothing for no hair tax. Come to the Bahamas, you say, pay the hair tax or don't come. See, we can dictate to them. They don't like that. And we're in a position to dictate to them. And we kind of have to be careful about that. But I think what we need to do in our country, we need to set up shop so that our government can put cruise ship docking facilities in place at every family island. And when our government does that, we need to say to the cruise ships, family islands are off limit for y'all putting destinations. Y'all can come to us. Because I could foresee, God forbid, I could foresee 20 years down the road, the cruise ships would have expanded their destinations in the Bahamas so much that at least half of our major family islands They'll have little notch out areas where the cruise ship go, and they fix it up like how they do Celebration. Keep the passengers in one little area, and excuse me, to leave that area, they have to pay a bunch of money to get. So our government need to put near each settlement, or near each major settlement, or someplace where they can get to a nice settlement, cruise ship piers for all cruise lines to utilize. So while they are in the hunt for new destinations, we can give it to them. While they are building these so many more massive ships, because they get all this money and the whole world getting into cruising now, right? So this is a big deal now. And while a lot of those European countries and other developed countries are turning them away, because they say, y'all, we don't want y'all saturating our place. The Bahamas is ripe and ready because we got islands with only a handful of people. You ain't gonna congest nothing. We got beaches piled up like dirt. We got blue holes. We can carry crabbing. We can carry fishing. We can carry, we can make you Bahamians. We can teach you how to cook crabbing though. We can teach you how to go there and skin conch. And these are things people want to do when they come in the Bahamas. And I might ask, who on Celebration Key, which Bahamian entity takes a boat there? Now they can't stop you from coming there by boat. If you have a little skiff or 10 little skiffs, and soliciting tourists, telling them we'll take you out and teach you how to skin conch. Telling them we'll take you out to drop out there and teach you how to catch a snapper and fry it out there. You see, there are things that if we use our intuition as Bahamians, we can offer if we package it properly to foreigners, and they will totally enjoy doing some of these things and talk with it, and other foreigners come looking for it. You remember the swimming pigs? You'll be surprised to know how that swimming pig thing started off. You think that started out with Bahamians saying we could put some pigs on Bok Key or Stanley Key, and when we put the pigs there, they can learn to go in the sea, because they got to go there to eat. When we're feeding them, they can find food in the sea, and they can learn to swim. And then as the sail yachts come and anchor off, they start intermingling with the pigs, swimming with the pigs, feeding the pigs, and that becomes one of the most popular things to do in the Bahamas. People come from all over the world. Oh, I want to swim with the pigs. Oh, me and most Bahamians want to swim with pigs. But it's attractive to some people. It's attractive to many people. So by you saying you on Celebration Key, you come around in your skiff, you got your big sign up, skin conch, learn to skin conch. Learn to clean and fry the snapper that you catch. Boy, let me tell you something. And they got plenty of fish around Freeport. Celebration Key, they got drops around there. They could always go there and catch fish. Hand line. So, I believe personally that while Celebration Key is in a very remote destination, and the setup lends very heavily to Carnival Cruise Lines to make 90% of the profit that happens at Celebration Key. Because I want you to know that Carnival Cruise Lines is tied in with all those tours. You're not going to be doing a tour from there without the blessings of Carnival Cruise Lines. And if Carnival Cruise Lines blesses you with a tour, you've got to give them more than half. And those of you who don't know that, or didn't know that, now you know. Those cruise ships make more than half of every tour that that they put out there to sell for you. When they market that on their ship, half is theirs. And when you go on a cruise, as a cruise ship passenger, and you pay in the ship $180 for this nice tour, I don't want you to think this nice tour, the $180 getting people ashore. No, the ship get more than half of that. The ship you on charging you more than half of that so that you could go on that tour. Well, of course, they take on liability and all the rest of that. So you can't really knock them, right? But it is what it is. But when you come in your little skiff and you set a post with a big sign saying, learn to catch a snapper, clean the snapper, and eat the snapper. Learn to dive a conch, skin the conch, and what do you do with the conch? My God, make conch salad. You ain't cooking no conch. You ain't doing no crack conch out there. Make conch salad. And you get that highlighted and you put that on the internet, and eventually that start catching on like the swimming pigs. And people, before they even get to Freeport, say, oh, I can find a fella or that group or that company that just take you out to catch a snapper and fry it out there. I can find that company just take you out to dive your own conch and skin it and make conch salad right out there with your little family. Right? And these are things we got to sell. Because these are easy things for us to put together. Just need to expose it and let people know these things can happen. And then all of our family islands could be providing them those kind of services. So, I need to slow down. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Payne. And as we move to our first break, we want you to hold on until we come back and we'll talk a little about international ships. How do we survey them? How do we inspect them? Why do they need to be surveyed and inspected? And what a ship go through just to be out there trading in this real international world. So let's hold on. You're listening to Maritime Matters. We will be right back.
Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart. At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection. Still working on
right, we got the chain gang going on, people. Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned in to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bean. And today we are running on and on and on and on and on. The beat don't stop until the break of dawn. On this show, we talk maritime. Maritime Matters as weekly at 17:05. That's 5:05 p.m. every Tuesday here on Love 97 FM. The primary purpose of our show is to sensitize Bahamians of opportunities in the maritime sector. We also cover current maritime issues from the domestic and the international maritime feeds. The phone number to reach us, should you wish to get in on the discussion during the show, is 326-8255 or 322-3633. That's 326-8255 or 322-3633 to hear a replay of this show or any of our previous shows. Simply hit us up at any time via the YouTube page. That's Maritime Matters Bahamas. Just go to your YouTube on your electronic device and type into the search box Maritime Matters Bahamas. So let's talk maritime. And we continue our hot topic discussions. Earlier we were talking about shanty towns. We talk about how our Superman, Minister Clay Sweeting, Minister of Works, have re-engaged the clearing away of unregulated communities that we call or we know to be shanty towns. And, he cleared down quite a few in the past. And we know that there are quite a few remaining. And when I say quite a few, they say over 40. Right here in Nassau alone. Shanty towns that have to go. So, he took a job at the one just on the southern end of Montgomery Avenue. I think it named Montgomery Village or something like that. And they took down over 60 structures that were, of course, not built to specs, not approved by the building team or building group within the Ministry of Works that approves all buildings in the Bahamas. And in the process of clearing that away, there was a combustion because one of those unregulated home attendants decided he's going to get out of hand a bit. And of course, he ended up assaulting and injuring a whole superintendent on the police force, Superintendent Stephen Carey, who was the chair, or as we call it, the chairperson, right, of the Unregulated Communities Action Task Force. So this fellow was just out of hand. He needed a little spanking. I hope he got a spanking. But this is the kind of lash back you get when you allow things to fester and you try to regulate it afterwards. People feel like they have ownership. People feel like, why are you bothering me? Yeah, you do things wrong, but I done here. Anyway, that's what's going on with that one. And then we know now, according to our Superman, the demolitions will continue. And in future, before we clear away some of these unregulated communities, we're going to ensure that nobody is left. We can tell you in advance. Scat. So to say when they want people to clear away, scat. Get out of here. This is illegal. You're doing illegal things. You got to go because you're coming to break it down. And if you don't scat, we bring in the cuffs. We will lock you up until we finish what we have to do. Then we might let you out. That's how we want to carry on with that. And we don't know about that. That's what I think we need to do, eh? Again, the numbers to call if you want in on this discussion while it's happening: 326-8255, 322-3633. So there we go. Carnival celebration key. And we have, of course, the Shanty Town demolitions. When we talk about carnival celebration key, we talk about 2 ships coming in daily, and by the end of this year, I think it is arranged for another dock to be completed. I will have 2 more ships, and they'll have 4 ships on a routine basis, bringing in over 20,000 passengers, plus another 8,000 crew members. So that's almost 30,000 people on one spot. The potential to make a couple dollars from 30,000 people on one spot. All you got to do is be intuitive enough to have something that 10% of those people want. You turn rich. It is what it is. So I say to the Freeportians and Hierarchians and Pelican Pointians and McLean Tongians, Sweden Keyans, find something that you have ready access to, that you know how to deal with, to sell to these people. Because there's too many of them. They be budging and bison at the same. All you got to do is get to that beach where they're going to the beach, right there on the sea. You ain't got to even go on the site. Just go, set up your shop, get the government to approve what you want to do there, so you wouldn't be a vagrant, and go and make some money. That's all I can ask you to do. So now we move the discussion. Since ain't none of y'all trying to call me today. I don't know why none of y'all want to call me tonight. Nobody have nothing to say about the actions of the Unregulated Communities Action Task Force, what needs to happen, what has happened, where we need to go with this, because that's what we're talking about. Nobody wants to call in and say anything about what Bahamians could do to make celebration key, since it's already there, since it's on our land. Well, it's their land, but it's on our island. How Bahamians could make more money out of this, instead of Carnival reducing by 20% the amount of tours, because they fail it. It's 2 more sea tours, eh? Now we move to the topic that I think I know better than many Bahamians anyway. Surveys and inspections of international ships. When we say surveys and inspections, what are we talking about? Why are surveys and inspections necessary for those big, huge, large ships that we see out there in the distance, passing through our country and stopping in and out of some of our ports? Some of them. Why do they have to be surveyed and inspected? And I put it to you that these ships carry passengers in some cases, and in most cases, over 99% of the cases, they carry cargo. And because the sea can be so perilous in the sense that if it gets rough, anything on it, including ships, no matter the size, can be tossed about, can go through a lot of different talks, and if they're not built properly, they're liable to break and sink. And we've had, in the past, many ships that, because they were not built properly, couldn't take all the twists and turns that they had to do based on the waves or the motion of the ocean. It just snapped and sank. So we got to make sure that's stopped, and that have stopped. I mean, for decades now, we've not been having bulk carriers and whatnot, and tankers breaking half. And they had a lot of them that used to pass through the Bermuda Triangle, or we used to call it the Devil's Triangle. That's between Bermuda, the Bahamas, and the U.S. It's a triangle. It's an area where we lost so many ships and airplanes and stuff like that, that they used to say, if you go in that area, you ain't coming back out. Mind you, they didn't tell us at the time that 99% of the ships that traversed the Devil's Triangle didn't sink, didn't have any problems. But that 1% that did, just gone missing without a trace. We say it had to be the devil. That's how we go. And we call it the Devil's Triangle, right? But that's when ships were not built with the understanding that the sea could be so dangerous and so vicious. But like I say, we've gotten over that. Most ships today can sustain whatever the sea brings, except, of course, hurricanes and that type of thing. You just can't overcome them, eh? And because ships could be so vulnerable to the ocean and the seas, and we don't set rules when it comes to service and inspections for ships only in the summer, or only in the winter, or only when the weather's nice. No, those rules supposed to apply no matter what the conditions of the sea is. And it's for that purpose that we have got to have continuing inspections and surveys of ships to verify that the ship should be fit for duty, for purpose, for whatever it is designed to do. And because there must be accountability within the worldwide transportation of people and cargo by sea, the ship, therefore, has to undergo verification methods to ensure safety on board, to ensure safety of the ship from the ocean, to ensure pollution prevention of the ship. In other words, the ship itself is not polluting the oceans to affect marine life. And of course, to ensure in this day and time that security measures and procedures on board those ships are up to standard, to the sense where the ship wouldn't be sitting ducks from pirates and intruders and that type of thing. And this can only be accomplished by a series of surveys and inspections of those ships. And one might ask, what is the difference between a survey of a ship and an inspection of a ship? And you know that's a very good question. Again, 326 8255 or 322-3633. That will help you. That will help you to reach us and ask us some questions, right? Or reflect some things that you know of the sea, that you know of inspections and surveys. Because some of you out there listening you have cargo ships. You have your own private yachts. You deal with cargo trading between countries. So you have an idea why it's so important for these ships to engage surveys and inspections. And what's the difference between a survey and an inspection? Surveys are in-depth mandatory checks. See, your survey goes deep into what is being surveyed, because you get a variety of surveys on a ship. You do a survey just for your radios on board that ship. A survey to check that your batteries for your radios are good, not only for now, but for a period beyond when you could do the next annual survey. Because surveys are normally done around the same time every year, right? Within 3 months of the anniversary date. That's surveys, right? That's annual surveys. And then, of course, you have surveys to renew your 5-year certificate. And so the survey checks every iota of your radio, the power source of the radio. They go into details of your records of communicating using these radios. And then they got this thing called GMDSS, or Global Maritime Distress Safety System, where you got to have certain equipment so that if you get in a problem, you can send out that message and other ships would automatically receive it and know that you're in a problem from a safety perspective. So your radio survey has to go in depth into all of your requirements for radio installation on board your ship. Whereas an inspection is usually a surface level check that is carried out to verify compliance and survey certificate. So the person who come to do the survey of your radio equipment will have to go in the cupboards and check the batteries. They would have to check your written records of when you use the radios. They have to go around and make sure all the radios are powered up and on and they can hear things, and sometimes they can ask you to communicate to see that you getting a response. Excuse me. That's your survey of your radio equipment. Now, an inspector called a port state inspector, or somebody from a country that the ship is visiting. And inspectors are people who work for government. Surveyors are people who privately work for independent companies that verify ships. They surveyors. The people who work for the government, they're on the government payroll, they come to inspect your ship. They're not as qualified as a surveyor, but they are qualified to the extent where they could come and inspect. And a radio inspection simply says, I want to see where your GMDSS system is set up. I need to see your cargo ship safety radio certificate. Let me see your radio certificate. Your radio certificate will tell me what radios you have on board. What are the details of each radio? What they're supposed to do? What the impedance is? When the battery was checked. It will tell me what the surveyor verified. And once I see that certificate, and that certificate is valid, I have no reason to go any further into that, because that's the job of the surveyor. And so the difference in this case, when you're dealing with a radio certificate, just one. You got certificates for the hull, safety hull certificate. You got certificate for the safety equipment on board. You got certificate for the load line, for the tonnage. You got all kind of certificates. So all kind of different surveys got to be done, eh? But I'm only giving you a simple one to read. We ain't trying to make this too technical. And I'm just telling you the difference between the survey, which issues the statutory certificate to say your radios are in order with all the compliance requirement, and the inspection, which really just want to see your certificate to say your radio certification is valid. And you look through it to see the equipment, yada, 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 but you ain't got a jacket, nothing like the surveyor. Because you're an inspector. And so that's the difference between the surveyor or a survey and the inspector or an inspection. Question. Are there Bahamian surveyors for international ships? And are there Bahamian inspectors to inspect international ships? And the answer is no and yes. While we have, I don't know of any surveyor. See, the thing is, when you talk about surveyors for international ships, you're basically talking about those companies that provide surveys for ships worldwide. And in the Bahamas, we have no such company. We have no classification society in the Bahamas. That's what those companies are known as. Classification society. They class the ship. And if I name them for you, you'll hear some of the names that you're familiar with, eh? Like Lloyd's Register. Lloyd's Register, that's LR. That's one of the most popular classification societies in the world. And they survey ships all over the world for all countries, no matter which country you register your ship under. They can do the survey if you want them to. And they're one of the leading surveying companies, right? Lloyd's Register. And you might ask, well, I know that one, but I think I know the rest. You must have heard about ABS, American Bureau of Shipping. And ABS is owned and operated by United States citizens. And ABS provides that service for ships no matter what flag your ship is registered under. So in the Bahamas, we use ABS surveyors for some of our ships. Not that we own, but that we actually register. Same thing with Jamaica, Antigua and Barbuda, England, or should I say the United Kingdom, France, Spain. Some of the ships, the Greek ships, many of them are classed by ABS. Many of them are classed by Lloyd's Register. And then we get the French, or the classification societies coming out of France. It's known as BV, or Bureau Veritas. And BV is responsible for a lot of cargo ships surveys. They're like in the top 10 in the world. All of these names I call the top 10. It's hard to say who in the top 3. I think DNV, Det Norske Veritas coming out of Norway. These are the guys who deal mainly with the cruise ships. These guys are very well known worldwide in the shipping world as far as top classification societies. Then you get from Germany, Germanischer Lloyd. First they used to be Germanischer, Germany. But they joined hands with Lloyd's Register and made two other ones. So they're now Germanischer Lloyd, but they're based in Germany. Top class. And in Italy they got Reno, which is the Italian surveying company. So these European countries always had the lead, eh? And of course the US caught up. And then they got Korea, the Korean register. Then in all the way in the Far East, Japan got the Nippon NKK registration. And then these are big, huge registrations that provide the service worldwide, right? So those classification societies are the ones that provide the service worldwide. Now, do we have Bahamians working in those classifications? Because if you're not working in one of those classifications, you're not surveying international ships. And we had a few. You had Theo Devaney, for example, who worked for many years with Lloyd's Register as a Lloyd's surveyor. And then they mainly want engineers, or what do you call naval arcs. Theo Devaney happened to be a naval architect. He's an architect, but for designing ships, eh? And then we had one or two younger engineers over the years that also served as surveyors for ABS or Lloyd's Register or Germanischer Lloyd. I don't think they do BV but one of those such persons would have been my friend Ivan Clare Jr. And his mother Brenda Clare would have been the lady that ran the LJM Academy from its inception until I think just about last year or year before last. Yeah, her son Ivan was in China for years working for Classification Society, monitoring ships as they lay the keel, as they cut the steel. And he's been all over the world as an engineer and a Classification Society surveyor. So these are some of the Bahamians that were qualified enough and took on the mantle to survey big, large international ships. So we're not left out, right? And I think in the case of my good friend Theo Devaney, who was a Lloyd's Register surveyor, he decided that, because I tell you, surveyors only, when you work for one of those class societies, you make a salary, eh? And you may make $200,000 a year, you may make $100,000 a year. But the bottom line is, you're not going to make $1 million a year, right? Because their salary probably caps off at about $250,000, like $250,000 a year. They probably cap off there, right? For their lead surveyors and their chief surveyors and their big time surveyors. So, of course, Theo, my good friend Theo, decided, man, this ain't cutting it. I need to make more money. And he left and he opened up, he's doing his own inspections of large ships and survey of smaller ships or smaller vessels that are not solar ships, that don't go worldwide with international certifications. So he could survey, they need surveyors, he could survey those, right? Because they don't need a class society to do it. And of course, he does a lot of audits when it comes to safety audits under the ISM code, when it comes to security audits under the ISPS code of ships, and that type of thing. And he does, and I'm talking about Theo Devaney now. And in that regard, I guess I could always talk about my good friend Herbert Bain, who was never a classification society surveyor, because he's not an engineer, first of all. And second of all, he's in the Defense Force most of his career, right? Most of his adult life. So he couldn't work for no other entity. Excuse me. But Herbie Bain, once he got out of the Defense Force, became very ardent, very knowledgeable with ship inspection. I mean, ship inspections when you're talking about international ships. Those ships that have classification society issue certificates. And you go on them and you inspect them. And you inspect ships for the purpose of insurances. And you inspect ships that are on hire and off hire when they've been chartered to take certain things. And you inspect damages of ships and that type of thing. And Herbie Bain has come in that fold big time. And you don't like me to talk your business, but you're now making millions. And you know what? The door is wide open for Bahamians to become international ship inspectors. I didn't say surveyors. Because to be a surveyor, first of all, you want to be an engineer, and even if you're deck, even if you used to be a master mariner, and you know a lot about ship surveys, obviously, because to be a master mariner, you get put that ship has to go through a lot of surveys. You can become a class society surveyor, and they may only pay you $100,000 a year to start out with. But the time as you finish with them after 10 years, you probably be making $180,000, $200,000 a year, right? And then you could leave them and open your own shop and do international ship inspections like Theo Devaney did, like Herbie Bain did, like I would have done. Me, Captain Glenn Bain, would have done as a qualified inspector. I became and would have continued to be an authorized nautical inspector for the Royal Bahamas. Now, correction, I so stuck on my old Defense Force days, right? An authorized nautical inspector for all ships carrying the Bahamian flag. We had over 1,600 of them. And it was intended at that time, because I was a port state inspector for 3 years, inspecting cruise ships, inspecting tankers, inspecting bulk carriers, inspecting all international ships that would visit the Bahamas and carry another flag. I had the right to go on board at any time and inspect them. So I knew a lot about ship inspections. I did a lot of training. I worked along with the U.S. Coast Guard doing ship inspection for 6 months. So it ain't like I was guessing what I was doing. I knew what I was doing. And it's a similar thing with Commander Herbert Bain, or Herbie as I call him, right? Retired Lieutenant Commander Herbert Bain. And it's a similar thing with ex-Defense Force officer, Theo Devaney. And all of us, surprisingly enough, started out in the Defense Force. So what this should tell us is that there's a pool of potential in that Defense Force that is untapped, because the Defense Force didn't prepare us for getting out there and doing what we did. We had to prepare ourselves without the Defense Force even knowing, or without them being a part of it. So could you imagine what would happen if the Defense Force deliberately make an attempt to cause all of their officers to become qualified in the real merchant maritime arena, which will qualify them to become inspectors and surveyors, which will tie them in with the Bahamas Maritime Authority regime. Do you know that the Bahamas Maritime Authority has almost 200 inspectors worldwide? And out of that number, less than 5 are Bahamians? Almost 200 worldwide. There's a lot of room for qualified Bahamians to tap into that area. And nobody's trying to make it happen. Because we are so, what word I can use? Selfish? No, that ain't a good word for that. We just nincompoops when it comes to trying to create pathways for our people. Some of us don't even want to see our people thrive. And I can tell you, back in that Royal Bahamas Defense Force, many of those Commodores, we used to call it put spoke in the wheel, and they put all pole in these fellas' wheel to try and stop these fellas from getting certain exposure, because they don't want them to be able to go there and thrive in the maritime industry. They don't want them to go there and say, I am qualified to do this or I am qualified to do that based on these trainings I did. And there have to be, at some stage, a deliberate effort, and I've been trying now for years. And Commodore Floyd Moxie's in the chair right now, and I haven't even started with Floyd. Floyd is my good friend, right? To try and engage some of that pool of potential that we have in the Royal Bahamas to make international inspectors, to make international surveyors, to make international master mariners, to make international chief engineers, second engineers, engineer in charge, officer in charge of engineering watch, officer in charge of navigation watch, able seaman on board a ship, rating forming part of an. These are certifications that where you lie in defense first, you're capable of getting. And there's no limit. Because you could be a non-officer, you could be a rating, you could be, I know I have a friend by the name of Glenn Lightburn. And Glenn is not doing too well today. I think he had a stroke recently, but he's my good friend. We've been through the trenches together. Good man. And he's a leading seaman turned petty officer. And he went off to school in Fort Lauderdale, the same institution I went to. And he did some courses that qualified him from an academic perspective to become an officer in charge of navigation watch on any ship anywhere in the world. And with that, I think he got his 3,000 gross ton master certification. And then he became a maritime instructor where he opened a school called the Dites Maritime. And he trained tons of people to learn how to navigate in the open seas. He trained tons of people, the basics, the 4 core modules in the basic safety training, which you would need in order to serve in any capacity on any ship as a qualified seafarer. And this didn't happen because the Defense Force saw it necessary. It happened because once he got into that institution, because he started out in the Defense Force training people, the 4 core modules in the basic safety training under the STCW code. I know all about this, right? Because of this. He got that exposure with the establishment, the Maritime Professional Training Institute in Fort Lauderdale. That all us went to. Because we didn't have the opportunity like some of my children had to go off to maritime school in California, and a lot of people that went to State University in New York, SUNY, to become qualified as, get a degree in marine transportation and get your Coast Guard license or pass your Coast Guard exam so that you can get a BMA license. And BMA is still trying to make it difficult for people to get their license, right? As an officer in charge of navigation watch. So we could have a whole stream of people from the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. Once the Commodore wants to set it up so that we can have a force of qualified, commercially qualified officers and ratings in that force. And we should. Because by the time these guys are ready to retire at age 45 and age 50 and age 55 and whatnot, they will be retiring with a certification that the world out there is after. They want it. Yes, we want you to be part of our team. I know just last week, I received a call. I received a call where I was requested to find somebody in their 30s or early 40s who can come into a workplace out on the docks with the capacity to supervise dock workers and the capacity to make up schedules and follow schedules and deal with some payroll stuff, not payroll, what do you call it? Invoicing and data. Not, you're not making them up, you're just following through. Right? But you really out there as a dock supervisor, manager sort of thing. And they were hoping that there were some people in the defense force who would have enough inkling and knowledge to understand about maritime. But the only problem is based on my understanding, my knowledge, my experience, and my understanding of how the defense force is going right now. They don't have many officers and ratings who are exposed to real maritime engagements. For example, hardly any of them been to sea on a commercial ship that has the SOLAS Convention, the MAPOL Convention, the STCW Convention, the Load Line Convention, the Tonnage Convention, all of those things applying to you working on board that ship. And you are undergoing surveys and inspections to verify and certify that you understand these things. The Defense Force don't know nothing but that. That's why the Defense Force is doing so bad when it comes to maintenance of their ships. When it comes to operations of their ships. Because they really ain't got nothing to go by. And that's why if they arrange for their personal, and this show ain't really about bashing the Defense Force or degrading it. No. This show is about looking at the potential we have to grow the Defense Force. When it comes to having their personnel being able to carry out inspections under the IMO regulations, surveys under the IMO regulations, the commercial world, the real world, so that now they can adopt that and apply it within the force itself. And we wouldn't be so dependent on outsiders coming and fixing our vessels. And so much of our vessels getting major deficiencies and defects because we're not doing proper maintenance. And running aground because we're not doing proper navigation. We're not doing proper practice in the way these things are done in the real world. And I could go on and on and on and on, like the song say, on and on until the break of dawn. But I ain't doing it tonight, right? So ladies and gentlemen, we're fresh out of time. We apologize for our late start, but we're about to conclude. And at this point, I'd like to say thank you to you, dear listener. You ain't called, but that's all right. You know you're following. You know you like some of what you heard, if not all. I'd like to say thank you to my sponsors. Bahamas Maritime Connection, 101 Pharmacy, and Island Care Pharmacy. I'd like to say good night to my good old Auntie May, 93 years old, and going strong. 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 And with that, ladies and gentlemen, as always, we say to you, Maritime Matters, take